Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with Gordon Ross. And my guest this evening is Day Tucker, our Rural Affairs spokesperson. Evening, Day. Nice to see you again in the studio. On the show tonight, we'll be looking at, first of all, the Referendum Scotland Bill, which is making its progress through Holyrood in the next few weeks. The Referendum Scotland Bill Stage 1 debate took place in Holyrood today, and the bill is designed to provide a mechanism for the Scottish Government to hold referendums on a variety of subjects. However, the Tories, Labour and the Liberal Democrats have accused the SNP of just using the bill as a way of furthering the cause of independence. The Scottish National Party's Constitutional Relations Secretary Mike Russell urged MSPs to back the general principles of the bill so that Scotland maintains the gold standard of democratic engagement. He said that the bill should ensure the kind of rule-breaking that occurred during Westminster's 2016 Brexit referendum would not happen in Scotland. In commenting, Mike Russell said, "Scotland's future must be in Scotland's hands, not Boris Johnson's. And at this election, by voting SNP, the people of Scotland can escape Brexit and choose a better future with independence. The decision on whether to offer that choice should be made by the Scottish Parliament and not Westminster." In the 2016 Brexit vote, people of Scotland decided overwhelmingly to remain, but we've been subject to 3 years of Brexit chaos, with many more if the Tories get their way. The 2016 referendum was also marred by rule-breaking. There is a cast-iron mandate to hold a referendum whether to become an independent country, and there should be no attempt by Westminster to veto the right of the people to decide their own future. So I think now the SNP reiterating this strong message that this referendum is not going to be held back by the Tories, basically saying you can't have a Section 30 order, and the bill will make this referendum have strong legal underpinnings.
Yes. Well, I do hope so, because although rule breaking is something that seems to be standard policy from the Westminster parties,
it seems to be
particularly the Tories.
Yeah.
But then at least if the rules are there, then the rest of the international community can see that the SNP are trying to do the right thing. And if there are rule breakers, they'll be identified.
So we're hoping that by introducing this new legislation to underpin how referendums are run in Scotland and conducted, that they will get rid of the lying and the what would you say, the misrepresentations,
yes.
This kind of thing, which we saw or which we see so regularly, in fact,
it's happening
in
all
British
the time.
politics all the time.
Yes.
Seems to be the norm.
But then so we're hoping that this will happen because we've set up this code of conduct type of thing within a bill which makes it legal. We're hoping that in Scotland that will not be allowed to happen.
Well, under the terms of this piece of legislation, this creates a legal framework for referendums. In other words, it makes it different from the rest of the UK because, as far as I understand this, that Scots law applies to this bill, not English law.
No, and so they could continue to lie down
south. They cannot
south.
be. And at the moment, I think in the rest of the UK, there is no standard framework or rule book for referendums.
No.
And so every single one at the moment, every single referendum that there has been in the UK has been legislated on as a different referendum each time. So there are a different set of rules each time.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, imagine trying to run an election with different rules every time.
Yes.
Would be ridiculous.
Yes.
So it's obviously a very strange state of affairs.
Yes.
And
once again, Scotland leading the way.
As we should. As we should always do, try and set the bar.
Yes.
But despite the fact that the Scottish Government is trying to not just to legitimise this referendum, or referendums, I should say, but to create what would you say, a target, a standard for the rest of the UK to try and aim for.
A template.
But already the Scottish Tories are wanting to change the question that's asked in the next referendum to leave and remain.
Yes.
because they think
But that is because they want to confuse voters.
yeah, they want to conflate whether you're voting to leave or remain in the EU with the same with the UK.
Yeah.
But we know that the Electoral Commission is not going to be fooled by any of this. They're not stupid.
No.
We might not agree with everything the Electoral Commission does, but they're going to see through this pretty
let's
quickly.
hope so. Yes.
The point is that during the referendum on Brexit, they chose the words "leave and remain" because people didn't really understand what the EU was.
Right.
They didn't, in some cases, didn't even know that Britain was a member of the European Union. Some people just thought that we were in the EEC from 1973. So they didn't even know there was something that we could leave.
That's right. Well, even today, you're seeing when I say today, I don't mean literally today, but I've seen television clips of people being interviewed, and there were some people who had never heard of the EU.
Yeah.
So that's the level of diversity that we're trying to reach.
Well, as well as the Scottish Tories making this comment about changing the vote, changing the wording of the question.
Yes.
We've had Boris Johnson visiting Scotland today, and the SNP leader and First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said today the only thing Boris Johnson should be coming to Scotland to do today is to apologise for the chaos his party have subjected us to for years. Now, on a visit to Moray today, Boris Johnson told the Tory supporters that he would not allow Scotland to hold an independence referendum if the SNP wins a majority of Scottish seats in the coming election, or even if the SNP won a majority for Indy Ref 2 in the Scottish elections in 2021. So he's basically saying, I'm not going to allow you to do anything to do with independence at any kind of election. So
colonialism.
Do you think the Tories were expecting the SNP to use this so-called Plan B of using this election as not just a mandate for independence, but as an independence plebiscite? But Boris seems to be suggesting that might be the case. But the SNP are actually the main challengers anyway in every single Tory seat in Scotland, and according to Nicola Sturgeon, I'm just reading down through this, that we will do our bit in trying to ensure that his time in Downing Street has already come to an end. So the SNP clearly going after the Tory seats, and as well they should, really.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they shouldn't have lost those 13 seats in the first place.
No, and I still, at the back of my mind, I'm not convinced that it was all legal, that election.
What do you think may have happened then?
Well, I think that we're as usual, was Scotland not one of the experimental bases for Cambridge Analytica and all that kind of thing. Now, it's really going to all blow up very, very soon, but whether it will be in time for the election, I'm not sure. It would be delicious if it was.
Well, Boris is already sitting on a report created by his own civil service and his own secret service.
Yes.
Into
who didn't approve his access to certain papers.
This report allegedly looks at the possibility of a connection between Russian interference, wasn't it?
Yes.
In the both. Now it's a committee report, a Commons committee report. It's already been. It's been published, really. It's already been produced.
Yeah, it's been scrutinised.
It has been sent to Number 10.
Yeah.
And all that Number 10 had to do was rubber stamp it and basically present its findings.
Yeah.
So there must be something in this.
Yeah, because normally it's then handed over after about 10 days.
And of course the rest of the Commons would be allowed to read this report and to be able to debate it and discuss its significance. But for some reason this is being suppressed. It's obviously got something in it which is detrimental to the election campaign for the Conservatives. But what could that be?
Well, it could be. I think it'll be proof that there are clear links between Dominic Cummings, Aaron Banks, and various other actors, including perhaps the three Tories, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson, and who's the other one that was involved?
We both know, Dave, that there are 3, I think, criminal cases pending at the moment in connection with the so-called dark money.
That's right.
Investigations are going on by the Police Service of Northern Ireland, the Police Scotland and the Metropolitan Police, all looking into things like sources of funding and the connections between politicians in the UK and in America, and also in Russia. But the official shall we say, the official investigation is only being done at the moment by the Metropolitan Police.
Yes.
But there are, as we know, there are several other lower level investigations going on in other parts. So there may well be a much greater web of dark money than we imagine.
Without a doubt. I mean, one of my Twitter people that I got in with a long time ago is James Patrick, who's an ex Metropolitan Police Inspector, or he was quite high up. He's not with them anymore, but he started at the same time as Carol Cadwallader and our own what's he called from Perthshire?
Is that Pete Wishart?
No. My brain's
John
gone.
Swinney?
No, he's not a politician.
Sorry.
He works for the democracy. Open Democracy.
Oh, right, okay,
and he's actually been promoted.
I think we should be able to find that name out fairly soon, actually.
Yes.
That person you're talking about. And they're looking into this already and publishing their own reports. I'd like to move on a little bit further now. I mean, the comments that have been made here in respect simply to Boris Johnson himself, never mind the dark money, from Nicola Sturgeon today, saying that he should come clean on his Brexit deal and his plans for a no-deal exit in barely over a year's time if the trade deal cannot be agreed. There's still a question mark hanging over Brexit. It's still not been decided.
But how is it that I saw on Twitter a video of a lady from the European Union, one of the, I don't know if she's part of the Commission or what, but she was saying that his deal is absolutely the same deal
that Theresa May
made, and yet he's claiming it's different.
There is one difference, and that was the subtraction or the removal of the backstop. But the backstop was actually not part of the deal itself. It was a condition, a precondition put on the deal if no agreement was reached. After we had left. In other words, in that period of whatever it was, 21 months that we had.
So we're still in that period because we haven't agreed to it. The Parliament hasn't.
No, but Boris seems to be saying that, well, he's not seems to be saying, he is saying that the backstop is off the table now, and the European Union has actually not quite said that. What they've said is that they will seek an agreement and they may adjust what goes into the future, the declaration about the future relationship.
Yes.
So
you'll be familiar with the phrase classic Dom. We need a new one, classic Boris.
Classic Boris.
Or classic Johnson, because people don't like us calling him Boris because it's too cuddly.
Well, according to the SNP, that if there is a no-trade deal agreed after we leave, it would be a disaster for Scotland and the rest of the UK. And according to Nicola Sturgeon, it underlines the huge threat the Tories actually pose. And whatever happens in this election, she goes on to say, Brexit will not in any sense be done, even if a deal is ultimately passed. It's an issue which is set to dominate Westminster politics one way or another for many years to come, perhaps decades to come.
Oh, yeah.
It's that far-reaching. And that's why, according to Ms Sturgeon, it's vital that Scotland chooses to escape Brexit by opting for a better future with independence. And I think, that's the kind of message now that many undecided voters are beginning to realise is the only way out now for them.
I'd like to hear her say, as an independent country within the EU, instead of just saying for independence.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of these voters who are undecided, they just hear the word independence, but they're not fully understanding of what it means.
There is always that opening, that chink in the armour for the United Kingdom side to get in there and say, oh, well, you're not getting into the EU, you'll have to reapply. In actual fact, we all know that that's not the case.
That's been debunked.
Because there is no waiting list, there's no queue to get in.
No.
You only have to have all of the preconditions met. In other words, you have to be aligned closely with Europe to its rules.
Which
we already are members. So there would be no question of just commuting our membership. Anyway, let's move on. There is allegedly a thing called the Lib Dem Green Plaid Pact. And this is a deal which supposedly has been done between the Liberal Democrats, the Greens and Plaid Cymru, who have said that they will stand down candidates in a so-called Remain alliance to maximise the chances of electing anti-Brexit MPs in the 12th of December general election. So this looks like a pushback against tactical voting from the Leave campaign,
right?
Who are maybe getting some Labour voters to vote Conservative in some areas in order to get a Leave supporting MP. Do you think this pact can have any effect? It may not exist much here in Scotland, but in England perhaps.
Yes, I think it probably will in England. But I think even Jo Swinson has admitted it probably she's not focusing on Scotland.
Well, I think that much was obvious with Jo Swinson aiming very squarely at Downing Street. Okay, apparently they are standing against Remain candidates from Labour as well. So this is not just an anti-Tory pact, this is an anti-Leave pact.
Anti-Leave, yes.
Well, according to this, it's possible that they might end up standing also against Labour Remain campaigners, which really begs the question: is this pact actually a Remain pact at all? When they are clearly undercutting Labour MP or potential MPs who are in favour of remaining. The Lib Dem president, Sal Brinton, said on Thursday morning that Labour wasn't included in the pact because, and I'm quoting here, Corbyn stands for Brexit and this is about Remain. So clearly they have got hold of the idea that the whole of the Labour Party is Jeremy Corbyn and that Labour basically is all for Brexit. And I think I don't think that's true, personally. And there's also this story about Tom Watson, who has stepped down from the Labour Party. Now, Tom Watson, what was his connection with Corbyn, and why would he be stepping down at this moment, do you think?
Well, he challenged Corbyn for the leadership.
I see.
And he has been a thorn in Corbyn's flesh for quite some time. And he clearly came out for Remain right at the start. But somehow that core at the top, the executive, seem to have an enormous amount of power, and I think they basically forced him out.
They forced him out?
I think so.
So you think because he is a little bit more to the right in the Labour Party?
He's more middle.
Middle?
Yeah, I wouldn't say he was right. I mean, nobody in Labour is right, are they?
Okay.
But he's more in the middle, I would think. But
so
the executive is far more left.
Yeah, so we're talking about somebody who would have been a traditional centre-left.
Yes, I think so.
We have, I've just had a note in, actually, it's just come in on the newswires, that the Conservative... Okay, this is a story about the Conservatives and the Labour having unveiled their plans for an infrastructure spending boom. Right, this is a huge boom by all accounts, that would increase investment in road, rail and buildings to the highest levels in more than 40 years, with parties signalling a large rise in public borrowing to pay for it. Sajid Javid, the Chancellor, used the speech in Manchester to rip up Tory borrowing rules, saying that he would spend as much as 3% of GDP on long-term projects. All of a sudden, the magic money tree appears.
Yes. I mean,
And
when you think about it, when Osborne was the Chancellor, and he refused to do that, and the SNP were saying to them, look, if you want to help the economy, you need to invest in it, get people in working, building houses, etc., etc. And for years they trickled along,
yeah.
imposing more and more cuts.
But of course, the Conservative Party, when the Labour Party, when the SNP had their growth commission
Yes.
started, and they looked at what was going to be necessary in terms of investment.
Yeah.
The Tories rubbished that.
Yes.
No, you can't spend that amount of money.
Yeah, and look at them now.
And now they're basically. And the Labour Party said that the Growth Commission report, if it was adopted by the Scottish Government after independence, would cause mass austerity.
Yes, yes.
Because of the borrowing. So we've now come out with, Labour itself has also come out with an even larger spending spree, which, according to this, as the election campaign turned to the economy, the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, used a speech in Liverpool to announce a £150 billion social infrastructure fund. And, borrowing for countries is a normal thing. This is the way the UK funds itself anyway. It borrows the money necessary to run the country for a year.
Yeah.
But what it's not been doing is it's not been using the maximum amount of its borrowing power that it has when it could have done.
When
it could have alleviated austerity much, much earlier.
Yes, yes.
So, anyway, according to Labour, McDonnell's planning a 5-year, £150 billion social transformation fund on top of, get this, £250 million green transformational funds, or 250 billion. So that's now 400 billion. We're talking about 0.4 trillion pounds. It's an absolutely unimaginable amount of money to be used over this 10-year period. It says it here, worth a combined £400 billion. The funds will be controlled from a new Treasury office based in the north of England.
Oh, aye.
So there's a little carrot there for the so-called Northern Powerhouse. And they're also intending that the social fund, as well as being for schools, hospitals, care homes and council houses, would also be used to retrofit homes across the country in their green industrial revolution with, but also with a kind of crossrail for the north. So they really are ladling it on. Anyway, we're going to go back to the story of the Greens. And
the Liberal Democrats and the pact.
Now, the Greens themselves have already put this forward. The Scottish Green Party put forward almost exactly this policy, where they are wanting a Green Deal.
Yes.
Yep.
Fair enough.
We are just looking here to see that the Scottish Greens are not part of this new electoral pact. They've stayed out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
but they are standing down
stuff
in Orkney and Shetland.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of different things going on here, and according to this, I'm just reading down a little bit here from Stephen Gethins. He's talking about it. He's been on Reporting Scotland recently, and hang on, we've just got the. Okay, this morning Andy Collins, who stood for the Green Party in 2015 election, said that he would stand aside and vote for Stephen Gethins as a strong advocate for the environment and locally in the North East Fife, because of his strong position against Brexit and for Scottish independence. Now, the announcement is the second in a week of a political opponent backing the SNP. This is one of several political endorsements coming from all parties at the moment for SNP candidates. On Friday, the former Liberal Democrat Provost of Fife, Frances Melville, announced her support, saying that Stephen Gethins had succeeded in bringing others together across the political divide to oppose Brexit and the damage being done by Boris Johnson's out-of-control government. At this critical time, we need someone with his experience and approach for the good of everyone here.
Yeah.
Now, according to a poll, this is YouGov polling in Scotland, has the SNP on 43%, the Tories on 20%, Labour on just 15%, and the Liberal Democrats trailing 31 points behind on just 12%.
Really?
According to the latest YouGov polling, yeah. Commenting, the former Green Party candidate for North East Fife, Andy Collins, has said that Gethins is a strong candidate, right? And he's for the environment, and he is local to East Fife.
Yes.
As the Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Group on Climate Change, he's called for the UK Government to step up the climate emergency. And according to Mr. Where is he? Mr. Collins, I beg your pardon. He's going to be supporting Stephen Gethins.
Good.
So it's fascinating how the ducks are lining up in a row.
Yes.
The planets are aligning, and the people in Scotland are now beginning to see, and from other parties' viewpoint, that the SNP is going the right way.
Yes. Yes.
With their climate policy. So they've
But
been getting.
they are. It's so clear that they are.
Indeed, yeah. And according to the SNP, it's received endorsements from every party as people from across the political spectrum announce their support for the party in the upcoming election. The SNP has made clear its position as the only party offering an escape from Brexit. Because if you think about it, I suppose the Liberal Democrats are not offering an escape from Brexit. They're going to try and stop it across the whole of the UK. But that could take a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas independence
We'll
would
stop
simply
it in
truncate
Scotland.
it before it can go any further. Last week, former Labour MSP and councillor Anne McTaggart joined the SNP group in Glasgow City Council. And she's claimed that it's now clear that independence is the only way forward for the people and the communities I've represented for 10 years. It offers them security and the opportunity which is being eroded by Westminster. Meanwhile, a TV historian and former Tory advisor, Bender Grosvenor, this week said that it was time to destroy the Tory party so that people like Rees-Mogg and Bridgen can never be near power again, and that he would vote SNP and support independence. Absolutely incredible.
This is all very sudden.
It is. It's quite remarkable. The number of MPs, MSPs, councillors, people at all levels and all strata of politics in Scotland are now flitting from their parties to behind the SNP. Even moderate Tories recognise that there's been a hard Brexit takeover in Downing Street, which will be catastrophic for jobs and the economy of Scotland. Scotland didn't vote for Brexit, and the SNP has been at the forefront of the campaign to respect Scotland's vote to remain in the EU, something I know that you're particularly keen on in your capacity in the rural community. The other parties want to deliver a Remain message in Scotland. They know they have to get behind the SNP. It's simply the only way they're going to be able to achieve this in Scotland. It's time to escape Brexit, put the Tories out of office, and put the decision about Scotland's future into our own hands. So pretty much a remarkable turnaround from the other parties. Quite incredible. The Scottish Greens, today's announcement from the Green Party of England and Wales on tactical voting does not apply in Scotland. We'll be glad to. The Scottish Greens are a separate political party.
I think Joe Swinson did say that right at the start.
That didn't apply here?
Yeah, before even before it was announced that there would be an election. I'm sure, or maybe it was when that was announced, but I remember her saying that this is not about Scotland.
But
this is England and Wales.
Yeah, but this is nothing even to do with us. This is the Scottish Greens themselves putting clear blue water between themselves and this pact.
Yes.
Or clear green water, I think, perhaps would be a better term.
Right.
Okay, Dave, we're coming up to the next story. Okay, massive Westminster cuts to public spending have harmed the UK is the day's headline. The SNP said the Tories can't hide from the devastating harm that a decade of massive cuts to public spending have done to family incomes, public services and the economy, after the Office for Budget Responsibility was blocked from publishing today's planned fiscal forecast update. Again, another report being sat on. What's going on? Well,
it's quite clear what's going on. You know, they will not own up to the harm that they have done. Why would they? They're Tories.
I guess so.
So,
I mean,
and they may not even recognise, some of them, the harm that they've done.
Well, it certainly seems that way. Kirsty Blackman, the economy spokesperson for the SNP, said it was utterly unacceptable that the Tories were trying to pull the wool over the voters' eyes with no up-to-date economic projections, no economic impact assessment for Boris Johnson's extreme Brexit deal. The whole thing seems to just be being swept under the rug in the hope that nobody will notice it when they go to the ballot boxes. Commenting on this, the economy spokesperson Kirsty Blackman says the Tories can't hide from the devastating harm they've done to family incomes, public services and the economy from a decade of massive cuts. It's utterly unacceptable that the Tory government is trying to censor and cover up the evidence of the damage that they've done to public finances and is refusing to publish analysis of the destruction they will cause to jobs and living standards with Boris Johnson's Brexit. So we've now got two dynamite reports, one of them which presumably is concealing something nasty about the involvement of the Russians in British politics, and the second one concealing bad news, extremely bad news if it's the OBR, on the damage that has been done. And still in clear sight, prior to that, is the UN report. Which one are you referring to?
The UN report, I think it was the UN.
Was this a special rapporteur?
Yes, yes.
Was it poverty?
Poverty and in the whole of the UK and the damage that they've done.
And I think, if I remember correctly, the Tories
I think it
dismissed
was
that
to disabled people, or mainly to disabled people, but it was more in general.
Anybody basically in poverty was looked at by this rapporteur from the European Union, and he created a damning report.
Absolutely.
On the state of
which they could not suppress because it was out with their hands.
But I do remember a Tory spokesperson trying to sort of minimise it and say it wasn't relevant or it was unduly gloomy or something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, We'll be just moving on to another story in a moment. It's just last comments from Kirsty Blackman on this. Westminster is broken beyond repair and failing Scotland abysmally. And at this crucial election, only a vote for the SNP can lock the Tories out of government and escape Brexit and put Scotland's future back in Scotland's hands and not Boris Johnson's. And that seems to be the message from the SNP at the moment. We can't trust the Conservatives. They're hiding an awful lot of things from the electorate. Now, moving on to the very sad story of the 39 Vietnamese people who were found dead in the back of a lorry in Essex. And this is news that Essex police have now said that families of those found dead in the refrigerated lorry trailer in Grays last month have now been informed as they've established the identities of everyone now.
That's amazing work
dreadful,
that they've done.
Container. Caroline Beasley Murray, the coroner, said, "May I take this opportunity to offer my deepest condolences to the victims' families." The senior officer in charge of the inquiry, Tom Smith, an assistant chief constable, said, "This is an important step in the investigation. It enables us to work with our Vietnamese police colleagues to support the families of those victims. It's only right that we provide an opportunity for family members to take in the news confirming the death of their loved ones before releasing any further information." The Vietnamese government has strongly condemned human trafficking and has described the deaths as a serious humanitarian tragedy. Day, before we leave this, we know there's a connection here with two men, I think it is, in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
Eamon Harrison, I think is one. I'm trying to find the name of the other, may not be on this. Mo Robinson. Both these men have appeared at Chelmsford Magistrates Court on 28th of October, charged with 39 counts of manslaughter, conspiracy to traffic, conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration and money laundering. It's quite a catalogue. Do you think this is just the tip of a huge iceberg?
I do.
How far does it reach? I mean, I don't think the police were expecting to find that these were Vietnamese people. They initially had thought, maybe assumed, that the people were Chinese or looked Oriental when they first found them.
Right.
But to find that they've all come from Vietnam.
From Vietnam.
It's a
I mean,
and one specific region of Vietnam as well.
Yes, yes.
And the people who were being trafficked were being promised jobs in the UK.
Was there not a farm uncovered in Northern Ireland where they had to rescue people that had been trafficked?
I believe so. I think they were. It was a cannabis farm, I think.
And you know, if you just wonder how long has this been going on? These links across.
It sounds like, I mean, from the what's been uncovered, this is obviously making these men a lot of money.
Yeah. Yes.
Because most of, or all of these people who were smuggled and have sadly died in this truck,
Yes.
well, they paid thousands, tens of thousands of pounds
To get here.
to get to the UK, only to die in a container after they've arrived. Detectives have... okay. We're going to move on to the next story now. This is a story of John Bolton, who's failed to appear before before Donald Trump's impeachment inquiry. A US House of Representatives Intelligence Committee official said on Thursday that President Donald Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton had threatened to take the committee to court if it subpoenas him to testify in the impeachment investigation. We would welcome John Bolton's deposition, and he did not appear, as he was requested to today. His counsel has informed us that unlike 3 other dedicated public servants who have worked for him in the NSC and who have complied with lawful subpoenas, Mr. Bolton would take us to court if we subpoenaed him, the official has said in the emailed statement. His testimony is expected to be damaging to Trump, according to a person familiar with the matter. But there is a major obstacle facing Democrats hoping to secure Bolton as a star witness. The court battle over congressional subpoenas will probably go to the Supreme Court and will spill over into next year. While the other officials have complied with the request to participate in the impeachment inquiry, without such judicial order, Bolton is not willing to do so, the people have said. So John Bolton appears to be, backpedaling. He's trying to... What is he trying to do? Is he trying to delay this?
I don't know. It seems bizarre to me. If you're subpoenaed,
surely you should appear.
Surely you should appear.
And yet he's actually threatening to take legal action against those who want him to appear before.
So is he trying to protect Trump?
It seems this way. Boris Johnson, I was going to say, Donald Trump obviously is coming up.
Freudian slip there.
Pardon my Freudian slip. Boris Johnson is coming up for re-election, I think in 2021, I believe. And it's believed by Trump's supporters that this is an attempt by the Democrats to undermine his authority as president before going into
well, it is.
Well, it's a re-election campaign. He's going for a second term. 2020, I beg your pardon, is the election for Trump. A House Intelligence Committee official said that Bolton's attorney informed the committee that Bolton would go to court if they were subpoenaed. And we regret Mr. Bolton's decision not to appear voluntarily, but we have no interest in allowing the administration to play rope-a-dope with us in the courts for months. This is an American phrase which is describing a delay. Basically, a way of log jamming the process.
Oh, right.
So a lot of shenanigans going on. Our next story this evening. Okay, as bigotry stirs globally, Bosnian Jews, Muslims recall a lesson in tolerance. Bosnia's Jews and Muslims today mark the bicentenary of the rescue of a dozen Jews from an Ottoman era governor's jail, saying their liberation by Sarajevo Muslims is a great example of the coexistence at a time of rising global sectarian hatred. In the 1819 rescue, which happened during a Muslim uprising and consequent removal of a corrupt Turkish governor Mehmet Rozdi Pasha, is a holiday for Sarajevo's Jews, known as the Purim de Zare. The governor has sought a huge ransom to spare the Jews' lives. The event was marked by a joint exhibition and a conference depicting the events and celebrating nearly 500 years of peaceful coexistence between Jews and their Muslim neighbours, as well as between Jews and Orthodox Serbs and Catholic Croats. Bosnian Muslims and Jews are one body, said Bosnian Muslims top cleric Hussein Kavazovic. forgive my
Chiasm.
pronunciation.
Chiasm.
Amid the ever-rising evil of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, we are renewing our pledge that we will remain good neighbours, will watch over each other as we did in the past. The Muslim rebellion was recorded by renowned Sarajevo Jewish historian Moshe Raphael Attias, also known as Zeki Effendi, in his book Sarajevo Megillah. The book's title is a reference to the Book of Esther, which is read aloud during the Jewish holiday of Purim. The holiday celebrates the Jews' salvation from genocide in ancient Persia and is normally held in about March. Attias studied Islam and medieval Persian literature and was a passionate interfaith advocate. His tombstone, which has epitaphs in Bosnian, Hebrew and Turkish, the latter inscribed in Arabic script, has been renovated at the town's Jewish cemetery as part of the Purim bicentenary. The tombstone itself is proof of Sarajevo's multiculturalism. Eli Tauber, the author and historian, told Reuters, "Close links between our communities are unique. The way we mark Purim is also unprecedented and could serve as a role model for the rest of the world. Jews have played a significant role in Sarajevo's cultural and economic life for 450 years. Expelled after the Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula, they found sanctuary in the city, then part of the Ottoman Empire." So a fantastic historical
Positive
lesson.
story.
And a positive story, as you say, in the midst of rising global bigotry and anti-Semitism. For such a wonderful story to emerge is making a nice change.
Doesn't
Every
it?
day we hear such bad news and such hatred all over the world.
Yes.
Before the Bosnian 1992-95 war, Sarajevo was a multi-ethnic melting pot. Mosques, churches and synagogues standing virtually side by side. It afterwards became predominantly Muslim, but some 200 Jews living in the town remain an important part of its multi-ethnic identity. So some vestiges of this multicultural society still remain. And it's still very much a vibrant multi-ethnic community.
Yeah.
Something which I think the rest of the world could do with
Yes,
taking a look at.
learning from.
Pardon me. Okay. Now, the Parliament is today paying tribute to nuclear test veterans. SNP MSP George Adam today will lead a members' business debate remembering the veterans who took part in the Ministry of Defence's atmospheric nuclear test programme in the 1950s. Between 1952 and 1958, the UK carried out 21 atmospheric nuclear tests, 12 in Australia, 9 at Christmas Island, now called Kiritimati in the South Pacific. As many as 22,000 witnessed the explosions in the South Pacific, and of which around 1,500 still survive today. Now, many have been battling since 2004 for compensation in relation to the health problems caused by the radiation exposure. Now, I recall this fight of these mostly men who were forced to watch these nuclear explosions, and they were actually told to look at the explosion, if I remember correctly, from ships in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
One man in particular, Mr. Ken McGinley, who's now 70, from Johnston in Renfrewshire, is one of 1,011 ex-servicemen attempting to sue the UK government for cancers and chronic conditions which they say were caused by participation in the programme.
It was servicemen that were made to watch.
They were used as guinea pigs, essentially, to see what the effect of a nuclear airburst would be on soldiers on the ground or in ships. And the results, I think, now are here for everyone to see. Most of them were national servicemen, believing that they were living a boy's own adventure. When they came home, many suffered illnesses related to their time in Christmas Island and the nuclear testing. Mr. McGinley has said it's time for the UK government to acknowledge the plight of these men before it's too late. I'm also hearing that Winston Churchill had wanted to do nuclear tests in the north of Scotland at one point. Absolutely astonishing claim, I think. Anyway, he also described what happened after the nuclear explosion. Mr. McGinley said it began to rain. The rain was discoloured and fell in large, heavy drops. Men who I believe were scientists wearing white suits and distinctive hoods with large black goggles began shouting for us to take cover in tents. And before we went off duty, we were ordered to kill the birds which had been injured by the explosion. Some were still flying around, but they were blind as their eyes had been burnt out. We used pickaxe handles to kill the birds. I didn't like doing this, but we had no choice because of the terrible condition they were in. On Christmas Island, I witnessed 5 bomb tests, and basically we had no protection. We were all told to do, all we were told to do was to stand and look at the bomb and cover our eyes up in case we got blinded by the flash. An incredible story. They were told to cover their eyes. So they actually were facing the bomb but covering their eyes. I think this is an incredible story that anybody could be used in this way.
Yes.
And for them to have to fight for this seems ridiculous, to fight for compensation. It reminds me a little bit of the fight for asbestosis sufferers, mesothelioma sufferers, is still going on as well. Now, the next story is also, unfortunately, a rather sad one. This is the handling of deaths in prisons. The Justice Secretary has announced an independent expert review today. And the independent expert review of the handling of deaths in prisons is now being established. The review will identify areas for improvement to ensure appropriate and transparent arrangements are in place in the immediate aftermath of deaths in Scottish prisons. It will also cover deaths of prisoners in NHS care and will report next summer. The independent review will be led by Wendy Sinclair-Gibbon, Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons for Scotland, with additional expertise and assurance provided by Professor Nancy Lukes, the Chief Executive of Families Outside, and a national charity which works on behalf of families affected by imprisonment. The review will examine the operational policies, practice and training in place within the Scottish Prison Service. So this review is intended to complement current arrangements for the investigation of deaths in custody and the holding of fatal accident inquiries. I think this is a fairly straightforward story of a report, really, which sounds like its time has come. So there's quite a lot to this report, which we don't unfortunately have time to cover. But Dave, if you had a member of your family in prison and they died in mysterious circumstances. Oh, I'm not talking hypothetically here, but if you
not
did,
guilty.
if you did, I suppose you would want that death properly investigated. But also, I mean, you'd want death to be prevented in the first place. You'd want strong measures in place to prevent either accidental death, suicide, or perhaps assault by other inmates.
Indeed.
You would want that to be extremely robust.
Yes.
This review apparently is drawing on evidence from previous reports within and external to the Scottish Prison Service and NHS. It says it should provide consideration of development of the dipolar process, whatever that may be, and the findings and recommendations arising from published reviews by Dr. Briege Nugent and the expert review of the provision of mental health services for young people in Young Offenders Institute in Polmont, which came out in May 2019. So this is also covering young people, and I think perhaps young people are more at risk.
Very vulnerable, yes.
And in fact, I think 2 young people died in prison recently. The review, it says, will not consider or comment on the circumstances of individual deaths in custody that are subject to investigations or have not been subject of a fatal accident inquiry, or where there has been a fatal accident inquiry, no determination has been issued. So it's there really to look at preventing deaths in prison, and also to make sure there is a robust framework for investigation. Now, the next story is an equally, I think, urgent one, and this is to do with tackling homelessness. Now, improving standards for temporary accommodation, universal standards for the equality of temporary homeless accommodation have been introduced by the Scottish Government. The new standards stipulate that local authorities will need to provide safe, warm and high quality accommodation for people at risk of homelessness while a permanent settled home is found. And I believe that this is the first time that there has been a legal requirement placed on local authorities to provide exactly this kind of safe accommodation.
Yes.
I've not heard of this before. I believe this is a way to ensure that people don't end up rough sleeping, and that the only option isn't perhaps a B&B,
Right.
that they have something decent to go to. The Housing Minister, Kevin Stewart, Scottish Housing Minister Kevin Stewart, has said Scotland has some of the strongest homelessness rates in the world, and these changes will allow more people to benefit from the support available. While temporary accommodation can offer an important emergency safety net for anyone who finds themselves homeless, such as those fleeing domestic violence, it should be purely temporary measure, and we want to make sure that anyone facing homelessness is supported into permanent settled accommodation that meets their needs. What do you think? Is this a way of preventing people from being trapped in poor accommodation? What do you think the ideas behind this?
Well, obviously, I mean, if everybody could be accommodated in a house or a flat or something like that, but I think it needs to be done at a real local level.
I believe actually this is one part of the programme. Looking at this now, the background to this is the changes form part of a wider update. In addition to that, the new clear advisory standards for temporary accommodation, the code will be updated with a raft of other changes to reflect new legislation. So there's been a lot of consultations on this, and it looks as though the main thrust here is to make sure that people don't end up in temporary accommodation permanently.
Right.
It seems to be the thrust of this, I think.
They need a permanence.
Yeah, and I think the government is trying to ensure that the councils have to provide a route from the temporary accommodation that they're given through to something more permanent, more suitable for their needs.
Yes.
And I guess they must be prioritising people who are fleeing domestic violence, you would think.
I would have thought.
Their need would be so urgent.
Yeah.
Especially
it starts
families.
way back down at the kindergarten level.
Yeah.
You know, following families through and having all the different agencies working together.
So more of a joined-up approach?
Yes, and under the community partnership, I know in our area there was the community partnership, and then the agencies did work together and they had regular meetings.
Yeah.
You know, the GPs would come together.
But was there a formal framework for that at
the
time?
Oh yeah, there is a framework, but it's very loose.
So this is a much more...
Every local authority has the flexibility to fit it to how they want to do it. And what happens in Stirling is probably quite different from what might happen in Fife.
So do you believe that this is a method of standardising the approach and offering a sort of guarantee to people facing homelessness?
It could be on the framework. You know, if there's a framework, and then there's lots of things that come off it that can be different from different people. But if it was up on the top level of the framework,
So you mean if it was a particularly urgent matter,
yes,
it would kind of jump up several levels in the framework?
It would be a priority recognised by the local authority and the government. But you see, some local authorities will have much more demand for that, I guess so, than others.
Especially a big city like Glasgow
and they need
or Edinburgh.
Yeah, they need more funding.
I think from what I've read of this, that the funding will be sort of proportionate to the need.
Yes, I'm sure.
Rural homelessness obviously has a completely different challenge because it's so much harder to
hidden.
reach people for a start. And as you say, it's hidden. When you say it's hidden, though, what do you mean? I think I know what you mean. Can you explain what you mean by hidden in the rural setting?
The rural areas, a lot of people know each other and they don't want to admit that they're struggling. And you'll get the youngsters staying within the family, or maybe if they're chucked out, then...
So do you feel that they maybe be hiding it by relying on wider family members to look after children?
Very much so. And if
to
they
provide
don't,
temporary accommodation for them?
If they don't, if their family won't have them, maybe their friends will have them, and they'll,
So you end up with what's called sofa surfing, basically.
Yes, sofa surfing.
Borrowing. Somewhere to sleep at night.
And also in the rural areas, quite often you've got quite a bit of wealth in some of the villages, and that can hide the poverty that's going on.
When you say wealth, are you talking about, pardon me, you're talking about perhaps wealthier people moving into a rural area and out of a city?
Yeah, or
just
they've been
property.
there for a while anyway, but you know, they're...
So your impression of going through a small village might be, oh, this looks very affluent.
Yes.
And there can't be a homelessness problem here.
And there will be an
Somewhere.
affluence about it,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, those that are at the bottom of the ladder will feel it doubly because they cannot ever access. And your affordable housing is all to do with how much the average house is worth in that village.
The definition of affordable is based
It's
on the
way
average
beyond
cost of a house.
a lot of people's.
So affordable is a kind of immovable feast.
Oh, it's a movables
definition.
feast, very much so. Mhm.
Okay, well, we're going to come to our final story this evening, and this, actually, I saw quite a little bit of news on this today myself, and this is a plan or an initiative which will produce a smart card that allows people to travel across lots of different modes of transport.
Mhm.
Not a new idea. I'm sure you'll remember Strathclyde Regional Council, when it was Strathclyde, used to have a zone card.
Right.
And I think it's still available. It allowed you to travel on trains and buses and connect the two together
Makes
using
sense.
a single ticket.
Mhm.
Now this, apparently, this is now a Scotland-wide programme, not a Strathclyde one. An improvement programme is now completed, resulting in a smarter travel experience, where one smart card now works across multiple modes of transport and multiple transport operators. In a joint project between public transport operators, the National Entitlement Card Programme Office, Young Scot and Transport Scotland, all 16 types of public transport smart cards can now be used between transport modes with ease. While contactless debit card and mobile payment is used for single and return journeys on many transport modes across Scotland, currently smart cards can allow for more complicated ticketing products such as weekly or monthly passes. And this improvement makes the process for people to use smart ticketing on public transport easier. It also aims to reduce the number of plastic smart cards produced. Obviously, there's a green issue there. And where was I? Oh, yes, and it aims to reduce the number of plastic smart cards for smart ticketing travel. And the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure and Connectivity, what a mouthful that is, Michael Matheson, welcomed the completion of the interoperability project. They don't have to make these words difficult to say, do they? Whilst visiting the redeveloped Partick Interchange Station, Mr Matheson said, "Our ambition has always been to see that some form of smart ticketing or payment can be used for all journeys across our public transport network. The Interoperability Improvement Project is a fantastic step forward to achieving our vision for smart ticketing across Scotland. To tackle the climate emergency, improve our air quality and benefit our health and well-being, we need to see less single occupancy car trips and more sustainable journeys made by walking, cycling and shared or public transport." So again, this is feeding in, not just to making things easier for people commuting to work, but even if you are travelling on a regular basis to visit a relative in hospital, for example, only having to buy one ticket, so much easier than buying multiple tickets and having to fish around in your purse or your wallet for them.
I mean, I think on some of the buses and trams, you can use your credit card. But, I mean, it's not that long ago since I remember that if you got on an Edinburgh bus, if you didn't have the right change, you didn't get change.
Yeah, that's true. And there's some bus services will give change and some don't.
Yes, yes. And I love the word entitlement there, because that's what we farmers get. We get awarded entitlements for the amount of land that we're working as a farm.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I think it's good that the populace of a country should be entitled to have some sort of benefit like this. And think on, what if these smart cards, the government or the agencies were able to tap in and allow, for instance, youngsters who've got to get to their apprentice work to have a discount on it.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember as a young man having a pass which allowed me to travel across buses and trains simultaneously. And I had a monthly ticket when I was a student, I remember that. So, I mean, it may not be a new idea, but it's certainly a bigger version. I mean, this is countrywide.
Really worth exploring. Making it smart is the word I like, and entitlement is the word I like.
Well, on that positive note, Dave, we are running out of time this evening, so I'm going to have to draw things to a close. That's the end of the programme tonight. I'd like to thank Day Tucker for being my guest this evening. Thanks, Day.
My pleasure.
Always nice to hear your views on things. As you know, making television programmes is an expensive business, and here at Broadcasting Scotland, we need your support to help us make more programmes for you. Your £5 a month can help us to produce more content and better programming. You'll find details of how to contribute to Broadcasting Scotland as a supporter on your screens now. In the meantime, Day, it's time for you and I to disappear off. But we'd like to say thank you to everybody for watching tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Scotland at 7. There will be another Scotland at 7 on Monday. We'll see you then. Bye for now.